Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. The story goes that Marie Antoinette was told that the peasants were starving because they didn't have any bread, and she responded with, "Well, let them eat cake." In this short video, I'm going to discuss a modern-day Marie Antoinette. On his first day in his current term in the White House, Joe Biden canceled the Keystone Pipeline and banned all new oil drilling on federal land. CNN reported on it like this. In short, shutting down Keystone XL is the start of something big. Research found that forthcoming Biden administration regulations will lower U.S. oil production by 1 million barrels per day by 2023 relative to a second Trump term. The idea behind the Biden regulations is to force Americans to cut back on their usage of oil by reducing the supply and raising the price. The Biden administration has done an excellent job of achieving those goals. Since the election, the price of gasoline has risen by almost 50%. The average price of gasoline in the United States is now above $3 per gallon for the first time since 2014, when Joe Biden was also in the White House. And the New York Times reports that a cyber attack has forced the shutdown of a top U.S. pipeline this week. So when a pipeline gets shut down for 4 days, the New York Times describes it as an attack. But when Joe Biden shuts down a pipeline permanently, the New York Times describes it as good policy. The reduction in supply in the United States has caused gasoline prices to skyrocket and is also causing shortages. People in the East are lining up for hours to purchase gasoline. This is exactly what the Biden administration wanted. They wanted to reduce the supply and thus reduce consumption of gasoline. Shutting down the Keystone Pipeline and banning new drilling was directly targeting those goals. Biden's Secretary of Energy is giddy with excitement about the misery which Americans are suffering.
Obviously, we have the acute issues with the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, but looking more holistically in a macro view, how does this speed up the efforts at DOE to move in more of a renewable direction, since this is going to have an impact on people at the pump?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously are all in on making sure that we meet the president's goals of getting to 100% clean electricity by 2035 and net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And, you know, if you drive an electric car, this would not be affecting you, clearly, but...
She's been told that the people have no gasoline, and her response is, let them use wind, solar, and electric cars. So let's take a look at what she's proposing. On Valentine's Day, much of the United States had record cold, and wind turbines were frozen in much of the country. The power grid in Texas largely shut down, and many people were without electricity for days. It's pretty difficult to recharge an electric car when you have no electricity. Dozens of people froze to death, and many more would have frozen if they didn't have the heater in their gasoline-powered car to keep them warm. Let's look at how Texas government got the state into this mess. 10 years ago, Texas leading climate academics warned that Texas was going to be hot and dry for the rest of the century. The Texas government did not prepare for cold weather because they were told by climate experts that it wasn't going to happen. So Texas invested big in wind energy and didn't take adequate care of their fossil fuel infrastructure. And on Valentine's Day, their wind turbines froze up, and some of their gas pipelines did as well because they weren't adequately insulated. This led to a disaster which would have made electric cars completely useless. The primary thing keeping millions of people alive in Texas was the fossil fuels being transferred through pipelines. So there's been 2 disasters this year which showed us how critically important these pipelines are. Without the pipelines, everything shuts down and people die. Not only was wind shut down in Texas, but solar panels became useless as well. The cost of recharging an electric car one time shot up to almost $1,000. Secretary, the people have no gasoline. Well, let them use Teslas. People in France weren't very happy when Marie Antoinette said something very similar a couple hundred years ago. And meanwhile, the White House press secretary says 100% of our focus is on delivering relief for the American people. Apparently their definition of delivering relief is making energy prices unaffordable. And when the White House is not making energy unaffordable, they're simply making it unavailable. And this has been their plan all along.
But kiddo, I want you to just take a look, okay? You don't have to agree. But I want you to look in my eyes. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel, and I am not going to cooperate.
Under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket.
The Obama-Biden approach of forcing tyranny on the American people is slightly different from the principles put forward by Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln said, "Government of the people, by the people, and for the people." The Obama-Biden approach, on the other hand, is to force everybody to accept their insane ideas. They say, let the people eat imaginary green energy. Toto's been pulling back the curtain on this insanity for the past 13 years. You can visit him and Kyrie on the web at realclimatescience.com.